Great, well, hello and welcome to, I think, the last talk on this particular stage. I don't think there's anything coming after us. But what I do want to say is, for those of you that have come, it's an absolute treat, and I might say a slight honor to be sitting alongside Moses Rashid. He is going to tell you an exciting story about the London edit, where it's come from, and some of the lessons that we can all take out of it.
Did you just get that wrong?
Did I?
The edit London.
The edit London, oh Christ, let's try that again.
That's the icebreaker right there.
Let's try that again, okay, so fucked up the opening sequence of that, all right. I'm sitting alongside some other chap. No, it's Moses Rashid, and we're going to be talking about the edit London, and most specifically we're going to be talking about Omnichannel, and how Moses has built in 4 short years, January 2020, a remarkably successful, game-changing business, but I'd also say cultural movement with the way that people think about Omnichannel, most especially Gen Z and some of the customers that he's targeting. Now, on the one hand, I'm going to be talking to Moses for the next 20 minutes or so, but we are going to allow time at the end for some questions. So if any of you have got something really burning that you would like to ask, we're going to hopefully get in 2, 3 quick-fire questions at the end in the last 5 minutes. So think on what you're hearing and think about if there's anything that you would like to ask. At the end, I'm sure you might take some questions anyway after we've finished up on the session. So, if you have been living under a rock for the last 4 years and you've missed the huge rise of the Edit London, and Moses, you currently have 300 pairs of sneakers?
I do indeed, yeah.
You don't ever go to 301, as I understand it.
When I hit 301, I tend to sell them on.
Okay.
Kind of, at least that's my small little give back, I guess.
And last year you handled 20,000 transactions of sneakers in the UK, and your business has grown at about 500% year on year, so pretty successful. Yeah. The first ever reseller to be invited into Harrods.
Indeed, yeah.
And so many stories to tell. What I'd like to, if I can, I'd love you to just tell us a little bit about the story of how you got started in January 2020, but then also give us a sense of the scale of where you are right now as a business.
Yeah, sure. So just firstly, for those that don't know the Edit London, we're a global omnichannel marketplace, limited sneakers, streetwear and luxury. So think Travis Scott's, Jordans, all the cool stuff. Within our first 3 years, we'd entered into 4 countries. And by the end of year, of course, we partnered with the Chicago Bulls, and by the end of year 4, we then got acquired by the Brand Alley Group. How did I get started? So I was at a sneaker festival buying some kicks for kind of £600-700. Just asked a very simple question. Buddy, do you have a plastic bag for me? And he said no, and it just blew my mind. I was paying this premium, but not getting a premium service. And so as I started thinking about it, I thought, well, there must be loads of other people like me that will pay a little bit more, but just want that product today. And therefore, the Edit London was born. And to give you an idea of scale, so within those 4 years, we grew it to over $10 million. We moved into 4 countries, so concession stores, of course, in Harrods, London, which we entered into October 21, and we're still there. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Amsterdam. And obtain investment from, of course, a whole bunch of celebrities, building the brand globally.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit about, so I mentioned Gen Z, which is one of the things I know that the eCommerce Expo were keen that we talked about. Can you talk a little bit about your customer? Who are the people? So share a little bit about what is it they're actually buying when they come to you, and secondly, who are they?
It's really interesting. We used to call it the hype beast, right? So the person, the guy or girl, it used to be 60% male, 40% female, that would purchase really hot product. And of course they still do, but now it's a slightly different way. So that customer is much more open to trying new independent brands and actually merging that with vintage or luxury and so forth. So that's part one. To give you an idea, so where we would drive our revenue from, principally 3 different revenue channels. So we've got, of course, e-commerce, paid search, paid social, organic affiliates and so forth. Part 2, of course, would be our concession store, so the 4 countries we'd talked about. And that's where we'd really try to focus on that high level product, but also we could remarket around those catchment areas. And part 3 actually was personal shopping. Personal shopping for us would give us an AOV of about £1,200 versus on site, which is about 300 quid. Now that came about by doing partnerships with the NBA, NFL, English Premier League, would put on these private shopping events for them. and then players, wives, girlfriends, significant others could purchase, and then obviously we would repeat buy.
And then the players.
Yeah.
So talk, if you can, share a little bit about some of your investors, because the players aren't just necessarily buying from you, they like you so much they're investing in you at the same time.
Yeah, we're very thankful that we had the likes of Xavier McKinney, who's the captain of the New York Giants, PJ Tucker, NBA star, Jesse Lingard, playing out in Korea now, I think. Ollie Watkins, obviously our hero for the moment in the recent championships. So yeah, but I think it's we bringing it back to the Gen Z piece. What's really interesting is the audience is outspoken and unfiltered.
Yeah.
They want to be communicated to in their own environment. So what does that mean? It's TikTok, it's Instagram, it's purchasing through Snapchat, or indeed or it might be in store. And I think the one thing that really intrigues me and what really underpins this community, and it's exactly that. It's about how do you take. We always think about it. How do you take a transactor to being an advocate to being a raving fan, and really that's all driven around community. How do you get them engaged with your brand, and I guess almost kind of bring them into those money can't buy experiences.
Yes.
Get them talking about your brand, and then bring them on the journey with you.
Yeah. And with regards to loyalty, so when so these people they're coming into the move, making a purchase or just having an experience to begin with, how loyal, especially when you talk about the difference between the average order value of a personal shopper at £1,200 versus somebody online at £300. What do you see in terms of loyalty from the audience as they come in making multiple transactions over a period of time? So
the lifetime value is pretty high, but I say that because we have a higher AOV of products, I guess.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a return rate, typically sits at about 30%.
Yes.
Right? So we're obviously acquiring new customers, but but one of the really interesting things, of course, are those people that are coming back time and time again.
Yes.
Thankfully, are spending considerable amounts of money, which is obviously our job to then think about how do we lock in that customer. It's actually really interesting as I've been walking around today, and I've been kind of looking at all these stands, and a lot of these companies do similar things. A lot of them are very different.
Yeah.
And it kind of got me thinking about what's that cut through, and how do you actually engage or make that thing memorable? I think I saw some racing game over there, and all these kind of somebody giving out espresso martinis and then lollipops over here, and it just got me thinking about that. And that's exactly what our job at the Edit London is, or should I say my job is about how do we continue to engage, how do we continue to bring that community along with us in a difficult market, right?
So obviously I wasn't planning to ask this question. I'm going to ask it anyway because it just made me think. So if the Edit London
is going off script.
Yeah, exactly. But if it was here today, and you had taken one of these concessions, what might I expect to find?
Oh my goodness! What do you guys think? What would you put? Music, DJ,
yeah.
Sneakers, of course.
Yeah.
I think I saw some customizers. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Get some of those guys in. Maybe a basketball hoop.
Yeah. Nice. Now, talking about experiences, London Fashion Week is about to be upon us, and I know that you were telling me about some great plans that you've got with Def Jam Records, and I loved what you were doing anyway, but when you started talking about the way that you were planning to partner with Def Jam Records, it really brought it home to me how you are very seamlessly crossing over between a digital experience and then a real experience, so much so that we're going to be going to see the C-suite of Universal Records after you told me the story, saying, well, let's just see if there's something we can do on an even bigger level than this. But if you can, share with everybody about your plans there. Yeah,
so we've actually just kind of at the tail end of the collaboration. So we just designed a t-shirt, or co-designed with Def Jam Records, co-signed by a rapper called Wretch32. Put that into Harrods at only 120 pieces for sale. That then brought about an event which actually happened on Tuesday night, so there are a few sore heads on Wednesday, including mine, which basically was at Stormzy's house party.
Yeah.
So the idea, again, you had lots of people from music, fashion, influencers, bringing about this amazing, event of music where we had the president of Def Jam that played the evening out, and this venue is incredible. It's kind of Instagram heaven, and actually one of the reasons we did it was about how do we kind of bring about this really cool event and get people talking about the brand, but actually how can we extend it beyond just creating a t-shirt and having kind of a one night thing. So actually today all the images will go out, all of those influencers will share. And one of the big things is, as we historically always built the brand, again, driving on the idea of culture and community and doing some really, really cool things, it doesn't always mean about, if there's any scale-up founders here or start founders here and so forth, it doesn't mean go and spend a shitload of money and that, that's the only way you build your brand. We'll deliver this whole thing on maybe £5,000 to £10,000. Yeah. But we've leveraged two brands to organically build this really cool moment in time, which again will get people talking, as you say, create hopefully the start of an ongoing partnership.
Yeah. And then the feedback loop I've seen from everybody in the room, then going back out onto digital is doing an amazing role for you from an e-commerce, digital commerce perspective, you'd hope.
The sheer volume of brand, so what you're seeing on socials, from reels to posts to tags and so forth, you're looking at maybe £250,000 worth of value for that £5,000 to £10,000. So it's it's a pretty good way to spend a little bit of our time to kind of create this moment.
Yeah. Now I'd also love it if you could share a little bit of the story about the Chicago Bulls. You mentioned them in the start, and you sort of made this conscious choice that you were working in the UK successfully, and then you went to the States.
Yeah.
And you were obviously smaller as a business when you went over to the States, but I'm kind of interested in why did you go to the States as a geography more than anything?
Yeah.
Was there something that we could learn from the visit that you went over there and your objectives when you went over there that can help us with the Gen Z target? But also, from an omnichannel perspective, it seemed to open an enormous amount of doors for you when you arrived with your idea and concept and products.
I think, so for me, I've always said we're a UK business, but with a global mindset. And again, actually, for those that are thinking about attacking that market, all orders under, I think, $800 have no customs or duties attached. But for $30 can get there in 24 hours.
Yeah.
It's easier to send a product to the US than it is to France.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, let's start going after this market more pragmatically. Yeah. How did it come about? So we used to have these inspiration sessions in our office. Yeah. Where basically all the younger folk in the office would tell us, older folk,
like us?
Yeah, what we should actually be doing. How should I run my business? And they said, boss, if you could choose a brand, what brand would you want to see your brand next to? And I said, well, it's the Chicago Bulls for me. Why? Because when I think of the Bulls, I think of Michael Jordan. When I think of Jordan, I of course think of sneakers. And so then I set about going through this, what was about 6 months actually of kind of speaking to everybody from the New York Giants, the Miami Dolphins, the 76ers, so across NBA.
And to help some of the starters, when you say, I just said about talking to the New York Giants, if you're a startup in the room, could you just go through the process of that? How did you find your way in? Was it just through sheer grit and perseverance, or?
Day one, I was like, what the hell am I doing? Yeah. So that was part one. I just kind of looked at, I was like, I have no clue about how to attack this market. So then I started looking through my LinkedIn. Thankfully, I've got quite a few connections there. Yeah. I found one guy who worked at the Chicago Bulls. And I was like, oh, hey buddy, how you doing? Can we jump on a call? And obviously I had to make sure the message had value.
Yeah.
Didn't hear from him for a good couple of weeks, so kind of set about opening up a few other doors, connecting on LinkedIn and so forth. Thankfully, we'd already had our foot in the door. We had a few people from the NBA and NFL purchasing with us, and I was asking to be put in touch. And when this guy came back to me, I thought, oh my God, I think this might be about to happen. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just snowballed from there. I think, as with anything, when you set your mind to it, the hardest bit is to just get going. Yeah. And then as conversations picked up and more people heard that we were looking to do a deal in the States, it just became its own thing.
Yeah.
Which was incredible. I think when we got to the end of the 6 months, it came down to the LA Rams and the Chicago Bulls. And of course, for me, there was only one winner, but incredibly humbling. And really kind of was a statement of intent about how we went into the US and how that then became 15% of our revenue.
Yeah. And then I know that Chicago Bulls, that's now opened a whole series of extra doors for you in the States. So you're telling me it's almost like one meeting led to another, and even you found yourself standing in a room with a group of people just going, how did I ever get here?
Does anyone here do work in the States? Yeah. The optimism and the energy when you're in the US is unbelievable, right? And so all you've got to do is just kind of be in the room. So the only thing you've got to be thinking about is like, how do I get in that room? And that was literally my mindset. And so when this happened, I think the thing you're talking about, I'm sat there having coffee with Lala Anthony.
Yeah.
I'm like, just a big star, Kim Kardashian's best friend, all this kind of thing. I honestly couldn't believe it. She was like, can I FaceTime my friend? I'm like, of course you can. Do whatever you want. And up pops Fat Joe. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy.
Yeah.
And I remember, all those tracks from. So anyway, I was flying to Chicago to meet the Bulls. We were doing a thing with the players on the private shopping events. So again, this is like a boyhood dream of mine, I swear to God. And she calls me, she's like, why don't you come back next week? We're doing a fundraiser. I was like, I'll be there. So I'm like, oh my God, I'll extend my ticket, go and buy a new outfit, all that kind of stuff. And I get to this fundraiser in New York. It was a Friday night. And there was Michael Rubin, there was president of the owner of Def Jam Records, there was Carmelo Anthony, and the mayor of New York, and incredibly humbled when I'd heard that they, had heard about the brand somehow. And it's moments like that where you kind of pinch yourself a little bit. And actually, then what happens from there is, you get approached by other people. We were approached by a very big name rapper who was interested in putting some money in, and honestly, it blows my mind. But if you're ever thinking about the US. I would say go for it. When you're throwing brand dollars into that market, for want of a better word, it could be like winging in the wind. So make sure you're kind of very focused on, certain markets. For us, it was New York. In New York, it was Williamsburg, and of course Chicago. And so, but yeah, an amazing place.
Yeah, fantastic. I'd love, if I may, to ask you about. We've been talking about the things that have worked really well, and the success. But also with the 4 years, I know that there's some bits, if I was being positive critical, you go, the things that would be even better if, the things that you took some great learnings away from, that maybe that didn't quite have the outcome you expected. Have you had any learnings along the way that we could all learn from?
Truthfully, I could write a book on this stuff.
Yeah.
I have messed up on so many times, but for one, everyone loves a trier and all that, Yeah. No, big thing really was, as I think about it, actually, we grew very quickly into international markets. And when we launched the store in Galeries Lafayette in Qatar, in Doha, we launched it just before the World Cup. And we obviously we thought, they print money in Qatar, we have to be there, it's going to be the World Cup. So we've executed this whole thing in probably, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And after the first quarter, which was thankfully very successful, but I would arguably say driven by kind of tourist trade, the results started dipping.
Yeah.
And so what's the learning? Doing a bit more due diligence, I think, not getting carried away with the emotional part of, we're about to move into this country and so forth. But, again, I could write a book on what not to do, I think.
Yeah. We've got I think we've got about 5 minutes left. We've got some time for some questions from the floor. We've got Miranda at the back who's got a handheld mic, and there's a chap at the front in a stripy t-shirt. And if you can tell us who you are, where you're from, and, tell everybody else who you are, where you're from, and what would you like to ask?
Hi everybody, I'm Phil from Avon Cosmetics.
Excellent.
Gen Z are not our high proportion of our business, which
but
is
they might be.
It might be. It needs to be, which is why I'm here.
Yeah.
And looking at the title, I'd love to hear a bit more about embracing Gen Z. On the face of it, Gen Z love trainers. It could be, a big part of why you've been successful. But what else? What can I learn as a representative of Avon from you, who have succeeded with Gen Z?
Yeah. I guess we're in a fortunate position where sneakers and streetwear is like cannon fodder for the Gen Z market. So I'd say for yourselves and actually any other brand, again, just really probably taking a step back and actually just thinking about where the audience is, how they're operating, how you communicate with them in their respective language, how you communicate with them in their respective environments. And that's really, really key, because ultimately it needs to be short form, it needs to be interesting, it needs to be captivating, it needs to be engaging. And then it comes back down to that community bit. So I'd say to you, what are you doing in that space to bring the audience on the journey with you? They would be really the key things.
Yeah, because you certainly spoke to me about really getting on top of the communication cycle, and how you're speaking would seem to be as important as what it is you're actually saying to them, as in the manner with which you're going about communicating with them.
Yeah.
And I think certainly I know I'm not the person who's actually asked the question, but in my career working for brands like Coke and McDonald's and brands that certainly I've always focused on the message that I'm saying as opposed to the manner with which I'm saying the message. So it's really flipping around its head. Who else might have a question? Who are you and where are you from, Kate?
Hi, I'm Kate from Crowd. Tell me a bit more about the Omnichannel. How are you linking data and all that stuff between stores and online?
It's a very good question, actually, because actually within our stores, we're not actually able to access much of the data because it goes through those respective stores' kind of POS machines. So the way that effectively we'll do it is then we'll just put paid media around those catchment areas, if you like, to then drive in-store footfall. And that's the way that we'll typically do it. By way of obviously how we link online, then there's a whole kind of data stack that's attached to our Shopify account and our ad tech stack that does that. Oh, I think we've got one over here.
NASA?
Hi, what's your strategy for AI and how are you using that to embrace Gen Z?
For AI for Gen Z. So we've done, obviously we've really thought about actually AI with us and about automation and things like that, but one of the biggest, I would say, game changers for us was thinking about how we create this elevated experience, and we used a company called Cortical, which is an AI business who effectively custom built our personalized chatbot.
Yeah.
But this chatbot would give you things like recommendations on what to purchase, increased dwell times, remarket with ideas, and hey, this is what you should style this with. And for us, actually, that's been delivered exponential growth.
Yeah. Yes, gentleman in the blue shirt.
Hi, Franklin from El Vardi. Yeah, thank you so much for your story. I'm a big fan of the brand. Been following it for a very long time, and my question is more around how you've been able to really establish trust in the brand. Because obviously, as you said, sneakers is very everyone loves them, but because what you've been able to build and obviously reaching these high-profile individuals, how were you able to navigate being authentic and building that brand story?
Okay, so the question was how do we build trusts, and and then the audience from that. So for us, I mean, Harrods was a game changer for us, but thankfully we've received quite a bit of press attention. Then again, it was about how we communicate with our audience right the way through, kind of deliver what you say, and so forth. And again, with that idea around that community building, that's been exponential right historically in the way that we've built the brand. And then actually, obviously, the power of using influencer and celebrity, particularly with that high net worth audience, news travels quite fast. So it's really important to really think about what's your value prop. Particularly whether you're a big established brand or a new one. Again, things like delivery times, speed of emails back, and things like that really, really build trust, because actually communication is kind of king or queen, right? And actually, what's really fascinating, and I recall this from my own experience. I'll email a big platform and it might take 4 days to get a response, but I'm obviously not sitting there for 4 days, with the intent to purchase. So the quicker and quicker you can make that using whether it be a chatbot or a real person or whatever it might be. And a lot of the things we were trying to do was, if anybody follows us on socials, we'd always show people that were working in the office. We'd be actually put a face to the brand and humanize what we were doing, rather than just being this slick looking brand and then that's it. So all of that kind of feeds into that one thing.
Do you find actually, if I could just pick up a question there about the influencers, are there particular influencer groups or specific influencers who you have found to be most successful for you?
Such an interesting.
Or is it a bit hit and miss?
Shall I be really honest?
Yeah.
Right. Don't know if I should.
You're amongst friends.
To be honest, we've used some really, really big names. and you get a load of follows, but not necessarily lots and lots of sales.
Yeah.
Right. We've used micro-influencers who've had really engaged, powerful audiences who have in turn created impact. And so it's a little bit like a seesaw. We've kind of gone one way or the other, and I'm not 100% confident we've found that sweet spot yet, to be honest, because I think it's continually changing.
Yeah.
But again, it's a fascinating space, and just making sure that whatever you're doing remains authentic to the audience that are receiving that information.
Question over here, Miranda, just down here, thanks.
Hi there. Thank you so much for coming to this, to speak to us today. It's been super interesting so far. My name is Vince. I'm a young entrepreneur. And as a young entrepreneur, a big thing for me is looking for ways in which I can capitalize cultural relevance, build out my social capital. So throughout your entrepreneurship journey, going from your previous company to now Edit London, what have been the main levers that you've been pulling in order to develop your social capital and also capitalize on that cultural relevance, which is so big, within the sneaker and fashion industry?
Yeah, so it's actually a really good question. So I think for us, obviously, sneaker streetwear, the whole idea of like drop culture and things like that, providing first looks, giving reviews, that straight away was quite a good thing for us. Then we thought about, and I always thought about, like, how can we put the brand in front of the right people? Mm-hmm. So very early on, we did a deal with Soho House, for example, and suddenly, lots of people that were wearing the product anyway were now seeing our brand. And then I thought about, okay, well, what's the next bit? And we started looking at music, we started looking at basketball, we started looking at football, we started looking at, and again, thinking about how we engage with those guys. So last year, we did a partnership with NBA 2K, the computer game. And kind of did this basketball tournament, £5,000 prize fund, 3 months of people trialing on YouTube to win spots to play at the tournament, and we did it under the backdrop of a sneaker festival. Yeah. So again, it's little things like that, and again, I'd always say it's not about how much money you spend. If you know a brand like Cortez, Clint and some of the things they've done, that's small budgets, huge impact, and I think anything that you're doing, again, without knowing anything about the brand, again, is just thinking about how you can remain cool, authentic, and remain in the conversation. That's the key, because you do one thing 1 year. In reality, we've done this amazing event with Def Jam. A month's time, everybody's on to the next thing. Probably next week, if we're really honest. How do you remain in the conversation? That's the biggest thing.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, Miranda's given me the eye. So I've got 2 questions to finish. Firstly, the question that I know everybody in this room has been burning to ask you, but has been too scared to ask. What is your footwear for today?
I've gone actually quite dumbed down for me, to be honest. I've just got a pair of Kith Converse.
Can I buy those on the platform, on the Edit London?
I don't actually think you can. Unbelievably, I'm actually going to say no to that.
And secondly, if there is one bit of advice that you can give to everybody in the room that you'd like them to think about doing first thing tomorrow morning, what would it be?
Again, looking at the room and thinking there might be people from big brands, or, I think if there's one thing you can take away from today, and you're thinking about how to engage with Gen Z, and you're thinking about your marketing tactics, biggest piece of advice, like blue sky thinking, what's the holy grail, how big can you get it, and then try and go one more, because you'll be very surprised, actually, if you don't quite, land that big brand or whatever it might be, even if you get halfway there, 3/4 of the way there, I can guarantee you it's going to set something in motion, which in turn will become exactly what you want.
Thank you very much. Well, it's a huge pleasure, Moses. Thank you very much. I'd like everybody to give Moses a massive round of applause.
Thank you.